2 weeks ago, Leigh posted a video here on the channel regarding her rollout of training classes for everyone. These were previously for paid channel members only, but we made the decision to make them available to everyone for the low price of free.
Zilch.
Zero.
Nada.
If that sounds too good to be true, it is true. And the value of the courses is way more than free. But you're all good and you're loyal and you're awesome. It's just one course that is free for now, but we're rolling them all out this year, along with our ebooks and other goodies as well that were previously part of the membership option. I'll link to the kickoff for the first course in the description below. That will bring you to a YouTube playlist containing all of the modules of this free course. It's over 4 hours long. Take your time. Don't try to do it all at once. It will be there for you and it will be completely free from this point forward. It's really good too. There's a question though, and it's come up a lot, both in the courses, when the course was part of channel membership, and then more recently when we've made it free. And it's been coming up from people who are taking the course, and it's, what camera should I get started with? Now, before we begin and start answering that, there's no right or wrong answer. But since the question does get asked so often, we feel like we do need to have an answer. So we decided to make a 4-part video series with 4 different answers to the question so that you can decide which answer is best for you. Today will be the first answer, but not the only. So today we're going to talk about cameras that do not have interchangeable lenses. And we'll even give a nod to something that you might have extremely handy, the phone. And Leigh and I will both give you a few suggestions on how to save money on that gear you're just getting started with.
Thank you for the perfect transition, Raymond. The sponsor of this portion of the video is KEH. KEH is the original re-commerce company, meaning that they buy and sell used gear. I was a customer of KEH before I started working with them, and I continue to go to them to sell my own used gear and as my source for purchasing used gear. Purchasing used is a great way to save money, especially when you're a beginner and you don't really know what you'll end up liking or wanting in a camera kit. So purchasing new is fine. In fact, if you decide that you don't like whatever it is that you purchase new, you can sell it to KEH for money to purchase something else that you'll love. But if you aren't ready to pay new gear prices, purchasing used at KEH is perfect. They have such a wide variety of gear, new, old, and everything in between, along with accessories like tripods and bags and lighting. And the good folks over at KEH test the gear and have a clear rating system on their website that explains the exact condition of each item so that you know exactly what to expect. I do have affiliate links for you in the description of this video. Using those links to get to KEH helps KEH know to continue supporting this channel. I also have special codes for you in the description that give you a discount on the purchase of gear and a bonus on the sale of your gear. It's a win-win because I also get a small commission, which in combination with the KEH sponsorship helps me continue to release projects like this video series and the complete photography courses that Raymond mentioned earlier. So thank you to those of you that use those links, and thank you to KEH for continuing to support this channel.
I'm going to talk the most today about Fujifilm's excellent X100 series of cameras. We've got one here. And Leigh is going to talk about her Leica Q2 and how that's different from the Fujifilm in a few different ways. And then Leigh also with a couple of Sony cameras, one which we own, and its sibling camera that we have reviewed but do not own. One of the first things that you will learn, either in Leigh's course or different courses that cover the basics of photography, is the exposure triangle. Not the Bermuda Triangle, not that triangle thingy thing, the exposure triangle, which incorporates shutter speed, lens aperture, and ISO, or the sensitivity of the camera's sensor itself to light. Every camera back here allows you to adjust these settings and even have the camera make some or all of the decisions for you. Ultimately, you get to choose which settings you control manually and which you leave in autopilot. But it's always a good idea to understand what the concepts mean and how to adjust them on your camera, whether you're taking full control or offloading some of that onto the camera's little mind. One reason why I love the Fujifilm X100 series cameras for newer photographers is that the adjustments to those three very important aspects of photography can all be performed with tangible, dedicated adjustments on the body of the camera itself, the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO. With our X100V, for example, I rarely find myself in the menus of the camera when making adjustments. That keeps me in the moment, focused on the subject, and focused on how I'm composing the image of that subject. And that's so important when you're getting started, not to get wrapped up in the camera, but to be obsessed with the image. Let's not ignore that when you make these adjustments on this X100V, the X100F that we owned previously, the X100T that we reviewed years ago, and other iterations of the X100 series, when you're making those adjustments, you can feel the adjustment dials clicking. You can hear them, and you're looking at actual imprinted dials that won't disappear if you get some random setting wrong or go to the wrong screen or anything like that. They're there, they're real items in the real world. For me, it's the closest you can get to an old school hands-on film camera experience while shooting digital. And many of you learned on those old school cameras, and this is a throwback to them. It's a great learning tool. You're physically making the changes on the body of the camera, but unlike film, the results can immediately be seen either through the viewfinder or the screen on the back of the camera. So you can go into an instant feedback loop even when you're on the field, and you see your mistakes right away and learn from them. The X100 series of cameras are not the least expensive. This lens does not zoom. Now, I did say that these are non-interchangeable lens cameras today. Fujifilm does offer a wide-angle lens adapter for the X100 cameras, along with a mild telephoto adapter. We do own the wide-angle adapter. It comes in handy. These don't replace the lens on the camera. They're an addition. They screw into the existing lens, which makes it not quite as nimble to take on and off. Generally, we just pick one configuration and go with it for the whole day. But I did want to mention that with the X100 series, you do have some of that additional flexibility. Now, you'll never hear either of us say that you need to buy this camera or any other specific model to help you learn photography. But regarding the Fujifilm X100 series and many of their other interchangeable lens options, it sure can help to have the dedicated dials and controls that Fujifilm offers, especially when you're getting started and just want to get everything straight and easy right in front of you, one item at a time, without feeling overwhelmed or that you have too many options in front of you or that you're paging and paging through menus just to find, one simple thing. Fortunately, with Leigh's courses, whether you're using a camera like this one, an interchangeable lens camera, or even your phone, she's got you covered. And one more thing about this camera before we let Leigh do some talking. It's a camera that's good for beginners, in our opinion, but many advanced photographers enjoy the tactile nature of these throwback cameras and use them as a more compact daily driver option, reserving the use of their more intensive gear for assignments, special occasions, things where bigger gear can count. The quality of both still images and video with the X100 series cameras, it's among the best out there, even given the size. So any limitations you run into, especially as a beginner, will be more about your learning curve than any capabilities that are in or not in this camera.
Exactly. I actually have my everyday bag right here. I know you'll ask what it is, so I will link to this bag on Manfrotto's website and actually also to Raymond's new everyday bag on Lowpro's site in the description of this video. But anyway, the camera compartment at the bottom of that bag has room for an interchangeable lens camera, an extra lens or two, but on the day-to-day, if I'm just going to the grocery store or I'm picking up the kids from school, I typically have either the Fujifilm X100V or the Leica Q2 in there. With the Leica Q2, much of what Raymond said about the X100 series really holds true, with a couple of key differences. This camera does have some tactile controls for aperture and for shutter speed, but the ISO sensitivity is adjusted either in the menus or I set a button on the camera to adjust it. Another big difference between this and the X100 series is cost. This is a much more expensive camera, to the point where many Leica cameras are considered to be a combination of artistic industrial design, capability, and certainly luxury. Leica cameras are often held and maintained for generations, and while expensive, they hold their value extremely well. They're not unapproachable for a beginner photographer if you do have the budget. And one advantage of the Q2 or the Q before it over some of Leica's other offerings is that you're paying for both the body and the one single 28mm f1.7 Summilux lens that also has macro capability. Again, like the X100 series that Raymond spoke about, this lens does not zoom. And you might immediately be thinking, wait a minute, most cameras zoom, even many phones zoom these days. And both the Q and the X100 series cameras do have what you may call a digital zoom, or maybe more appropriately stated, a helpful crop. The X100V even allows you to configure the manual focusing ring as a zoom ring. And with the Q and Q2, it's a button to pull you into the scene if you want to program it like that. And while these are not a substitute for an interchangeable lens camera and a telephoto lens like this, I'll say that we'll bring either the Q2 or the X100V out for a day of photography, and as long as we're not specifically photographing birds or sports from a distance, we're always pleased with the results. In the case of the Q2 with its f1.7 aperture, you can shoot portraits all day, even with the modest resolution that the virtual zoom brings. And the results simply work. I'm not saying that this is a dedicated portrait camera, but especially for someone getting started, your results will be just fine. We captured these portraits of me on a hike the other day using those digital zoom features on the Q2. Our results were perfect for this style of portraiture, and your results may help you decide what's next for you in that never-ending journey of photography gear. On to our final two options that we will discuss today. Two very similar cameras, the Sony ZV-1. On to our final two options that we will discuss today. Two very similar cameras. I have one here, the Sony ZV-1 and the Sony Rx100 Mark 7. These cameras are unique in that they are simple to operate while also giving you the flexibility to utilize many of the advanced functions common to Sony's much more expensive cameras, such as their amazing super intelligent subject recognition and tracking options. When it comes to fast-moving subjects in a wide range of distances, these two Sony cameras really take the cake for super compact, fixed lens cameras. But while the APS-C sensor X100V and the full frame sensor Q2 have fixed lens, fixed focal length lenses, the Sony ZV-1 and the Sony Rx100 series cameras each have a 1-inch sensor, a fixed lens, but they do zoom. The ZV-1 is marketed more towards vloggers, done well enough that we purchased one for quick in-the-field video. It's a mid-range zoom lens, which means 24 to 70 millimeter equivalent, which is very helpful if the subject is here or over there. The ZV-1 does lack a viewfinder though, which for me personally makes me a little apprehensive. I do like to screen out the world when composing, and the Rx100 series does have a viewfinder. I mean, obviously I purchased the ZV-1 anyway, so it wasn't a deal breaker for me. And that very similar, more expensive Rx100 Mark 7 in my case, but there were obviously 6 before it, have a more flexible zoom range. The Mark 7 has a 200 millimeter equivalent, which is squarely in the telephoto range, with 24 millimeter equivalent on the wide end to get beautiful landscapes and other wide angle delights and everything in between. While I'd argue that the two Sony cameras have less soul than the Fujifilm X100 series and virtually any Leica camera. And the controls aren't tactile. What they lack in that department, they definitely compensate for with technology and versatility. I've had all of the cameras that we've talked about today out on runs with me, but it's only the ZV-1 and the Rx100 Mark 7 that I felt comfortable holding in my hand while trail running, which means that I don't have to stop to pull the camera out of my hydration pack, and I end up with more photos at the end of the day. Photography aficionados may argue that these two Sony options have a smaller 1-inch sensor compared to the market that is flooded with full frame and APS-C options. But from a practical standpoint, your composition and your technical skills, especially when starting out, will be much bigger potential limitations compared to anything technical about these cameras. And whether or not you're actually using the camera and getting practice, like when I choose to take the ZV-1 instead of the Q2 when I'm going out for a hot and difficult trail run. Finally, if you are thinking, wait a minute, these cameras are an investment, they're expensive, that's time to pause. Grab your phone where the cameras are more capable than ever and just start there. There are apps that let you control the technical aspects of your phone's camera. Your phone's generally always with you, and it's pretty nice to compose on a large phone screen. In fact, your use of your phone as your primary camera may help steer you towards the right dedicated camera for you. Raymond's and my phones get tons of use. We both use the standard built-in camera app though. If you have a favorite camera app, especially one that allows you to control some exposure variables, let us know in the comments. Okay, Raymond, do you have anything else on your mind today?
To wrap up my thoughts, the point of recommending fixed lens cameras to beginners is simplicity. You don't have as many options to be confusing. Going with a fixed lens camera means you have one decision, the camera. Then you can hit the ground running with your learning and practice. And I caution you not to get too involved in discussions of sensor size, autofocus speed, detection, AI, computational photography, all that stuff. In the beginning stages of your photography, it's so much more about the overall value of the camera itself and how it will support your learning. You simply don't need the newest and most expensive gear with all the bells and whistles to become a photographer.
Exactly. Thank you. As we mentioned in the beginning, this is a 4-part series. A fixed lens camera simply may not appeal to you. So in the next 3 parts, we will be discussing older digital gear, DSLRs, that are great for getting started and for purchasing used for pennies on the dollar. We'll talk about new modern mirrorless offerings that are great and similarly won't break the bank. And part 4 is a surprise, but it will definitely check all the boxes of affordability, capability, along with room to grow. We hope that this video was helpful for those of you getting started with photography and for those of you who are experienced but might be looking for some gear to help reignite that photography fire burning within you. Check out that first free course and let us know down in the comments if you have any questions. Thank you to KEH for continuing to support this channel. Remember, I do have affiliate links and codes down for you in the description. And thank you for watching.